of all, welcome to Flutter Pune, and this is our first in-person meet. So thank you guys for coming here. My name is Shri Bhagwat, and I am going to be your host today. So this is going to be an amazing event today. So first of all, let me start with the introduction of the community. We are Flutter community, and we make sure to organize events about Flutter, where we call the like-minded people together under one roof, and then we discuss and share knowledge about Flutter and what new things have been brought under Flutter, and what are the new innovations and what are the new releases that the core Flutter team has done. So we make sure that it reaches to all the people, and if there are any opportunities that the Flutter group or the teams have, then we can share them to you guys. So, भाई लोग हम यहाँ पर ready है सर, okay? So first of all, excitement चाहिए, सिर्फ शांत बैठ के रहो मत. If you have anything, you can ask questions. We also have a nice speakers aligned, starting with Yashashree, and then we have Deven, who is a GDE, Google Developer expert, and at the end we also have Vivek, who again is a Google Developer expert. I remember जब मैंने starting में Flutter शुरू किया था, बहुत कम ऐसे events होते थे. So you guys are lucky that you're getting a chance to attend such events and such skillful speakers with you. So the Flutter Pune has me as an organizer, and there is one more called as Darshan, who is present over here today, and he has been coming here from Bane. So we both have organized this event, and special thanks to Coditas to give us this venue so that we could arrange an amazing event and the arrangement that they have done. So special thanks to Abhay, who took an extra effort for us to give us this venue. And let me give you a basic agenda before we start this event. So at this start, we will have Yashashree, who will be speaking about responsiveness on Flutter. So you know like how Flutter application can work on multiple screens and multiple screen sizes. So she will tell how you can create an application which will work on both or on multiple screen sizes. Okay. So let us start with Yashashree. I call her and she can present her talk. So guys, give her a round of applause and welcome her.
Hi, good morning everyone. Okay, I was kind of hoping that the response for the good morning itself will be lower because it's Saturday morning and it's like 10 o'clock and we have to get up and come here, right? So nice, I see a lot of enthusiasm in you guys for learning Flutter. So we'll start. So basically, I'll start with myself first. So this is Yashashree. I'm a full stack developer, and in Coditas, I'm working as a Flutter developer. So when I started my career, I was working I started with Android development first of all. So mobile development was one key factor, or it brought my attention, and so I started from Android development. So by doing so, by working as an Android developer, I was also I have some interest developed for the backend as well. So in the meantime, before joining Coditas, I was working as a backend developer as well. So but उधर भी जाके ऐसा लगा कि कुछ मजा नहीं आ रहा है, because I tell you why. Because in the mobile development as well, you get the results handy and you feel like कुछ भारी बना रहे हैं अपन, fancy हुआ है, user experience अच्छा है, तो एक interest develop हो जाता है. So after exploring the backend as well, I also felt like I should come back to mobile development again. But it was something like Android, iOS नहीं सीखना है, कुछ और चाहिए, कुछ नया चाहिए. And at the same time, Flutter was introduced and the Flutter was evolving, right? So it brought my attention, and in Coditas as well, like we have extensible range for the mobile development. Like हमारे पास Android projects है, iOS है, but like past 2 years से अपन Flutter development भी, Flutter projects भी पर भी काम कर रहे हैं. So like at that time, I felt like I get to learn. I get to explore this technology as well, like at the same time I get to implement that Flutter technology in my projects. So that was one golden opportunity for me. So now, like past 1.5 years, I'm working as a Flutter developer, and it's going great. And you know, so basically I choose this topic. It is really simple and straightforward. Yet it is very not difficult, but it is tedious to implement because there is no concrete solution or one conventional solution, in Flutter to get your app responsive. Basically, not only for the responsiveness, but Flutter में ऐसे बहुत ways है in order to get things done. Let's say मुझे अभी Flutter responsive का example है that you have a lot many options to implement. So उसमें से क्या choose करना है, क्या कौन सा suitable है for your projects, and which meet all your needs from the project. तो ऐसे इसके लिए I choose this topic. It is really simple and straightforward. But as you all know that Coditas is basically a service-based company. So it's our responsibility to deliver apps or any projects which are clean code, architecture based codes का, and as well as user experience wise भी वो rich apps हो. So in order to attract more users, more clients, it is very vital part that we should have our apps responsive. So that's why I chose this topic. So first of all, what is the need for having the responsive apps, right? So as you can see, the Phoebe is screaming like my eyes. So if you deliver such apps like this, then you all will be screaming, right? So I'm sure many of you have come across such screens or designs when you are learning or developing apps, right? Anyone has experienced such bad UI in the development, or anyone? So what you have done in order to tackle this problem?
Like there was too much content for the user to see. So what I did was I changed the components.
Sorry, सबको सुनाई दे रहा है? ये क्या बोल रहा है?
There was too much content on the screen. So what I did was eliminate some content.
Okay.
So basically I made it responsive.
Okay, so somehow you managed to make it responsive,
Yeah.
but have you used any other packages or libraries?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to share what was that?
Yeah, I would love to share. The name of the package is Flutter Sizer.
Okay.
So basically Flutter Sizer does what? It gives you same capabilities as we use in CSS.
Okay.
So you can get the device width, the device height, and the SP like pixels.
Right.
So it's a very good package.
Okay, nice. So Flutter Sizer was your kind of solution for your problem. So also we were also struggling with the same problem, like कि हमारे प्रोजेक्ट के नीड के हिसाब से कि हमारा कौन सा पैकेज फिट होगा या कौन सा अप्रोच लेना चाहिए. We were also struggling that, and we have also come across or going through many various packages as well as media queries and all this stuff. So this is basically just this is not an actually this is my experience which I am sharing in order to make your apps responsive. So the basic need is that over the past let's say 10 years, the device screen sizes has evolved so much. Like it has evolved from your fingerprint to palm. So it's a vital or very necessary part we have to deliver the responsive app basically. And not only we should cater the device sizes, we should cater orientation as well. Like मेरा app अभी portrait में चल रहा है तो I'm happy, ऐसा नहीं होता. So we have to make it responsive in such a way that it will run in the landscape mode as well. तो ये सब नीड है और ये सब अपन को एक ही कोड बेस से करना है. इट्स नॉट लाइक कि अभी लैंडस्केप है तो मेरा कुछ और कोड रन हो रहा है, पोर्ट्रेट है तो कुछ और. सो द फ्लटर का जो मेन कोर कॉन्सेप्ट है, लाइक यू हैव वन कोड बेस एंड इट विल केटर ऑल योर मोबाइल एज वेल एज वेब. सो ये प्रॉब्लम, दिस इज बेसिकली योर क्या बोलते हैं, one code base should cater your varied UI designs basically. So that is basically the need of the responsive UIs. So Flutter में ऐसे बहुत सारे मैंने एक्सप्लोर किए, लाइक मीडिया क्वेरीज है, लेट्स से लेआउट बिल्डर्स है, फ्रैक्शनली साइज्ड बॉक्स है, जो अपन को रिस्पॉन्सिव डिजाइन बिल्ड करने में हेल्प कर सकते हैं. सो उसमें भी व्हाट आई फील इज द बेसिकली लेआउट बिल्डर वगैरह जो है अपन का, तो वो दैट विल केटर ओनली टू द विजेट और टू द स्क्रीन. इट वुडंट बी लाइक पूरा स्क्रीन के लिए मैं लेआउट बिल्डर यूज कर रहा हूँ तो अगले स्क्रीन के लिए मुझे कुछ नेक्स्ट अप्रोच है. सो लेआउट बिल्डर इज लिमिटेड टू योर विजेट्स, whereas मीडिया क्वेरी का जो है इट विल बी अवेलेबल इन योर एंटायर स्क्रीन, एंटायर कॉन्टेक्स्ट, राइट. So what I feel is layout builder is like media query is more rich in the functionality than the layout builders or any fitted box, for example, for that matter. But media query is also like it is also giving you the overall like पूरा स्क्रीन के लिए आप मीडिया क्वेरी यूज कर सकते हो, ठीक है. बट what we need to develop is we have to have one wrapper around your media query which can be used throughout your application. ऐसा नहीं कि हर स्क्रीन में जाके मैं मीडिया क्वेरी लिख रही हूँ. That will be your like really bad coding and you have to manage it on the individual screen level. So ये जब अपन मीडिया क्वेरी यूज करते हैं तो what we need to have is we have to have one control centralized functionality which will tackle the media query and that can be applied in your project or in your all the screen. But again this will be the manual work, right? Because हर टाइम आपका let's say कुछ breakpoints डाले हैं आपने, sorry, what I miss is media query also tackles your breakpoints. Like let's say mobile का मैंने breakpoint set किया तो उस like उस dimension के लिए media query will work. If you change the breakpoint, you can change the UI and make it more responsive. So that is also there. So but media query में क्या होता है कि you have to manually write everything. Like you have to manually handle all the aspects in your project. कि पोर्ट्रेट में कैसा दिखना चाहिए, लैंडस्केप में कैसा दिखना चाहिए एंड ऑल दैट स्टफ. सो लाइक डू यू फॉलो मी टिल नाउ? सो इसमें कुछ प्रॉब्लम या क्वेश्चंस नहीं है, राइट? सो मीडिया क्वेरी के बाद क्या है कि बेसिकली एस्पेक्ट्स जो है रिस्पॉन्सिवनेस बनाने के, वो दो एस्पेक्ट्स है, लाइक स्केलिंग एंड रीसाइजिंग. बेसिकली अपन रिस्पॉन्सिवनेस देखते हैं ऐप में, मतलब क्या करते हैं कि वी आर आइदर स्केलिंग इट और रीसाइजिंग इट, राइट? सो उसके वजह से मतलब स्केलिंग में क्या होता है, लेट्स से you have a screen where you have two containers, let's say width and height 100, okay? If it is properly displaying on your mobile device, but you want to display it on the web or the tablet, then scaling क्या करेगा कि वो it will stretch your UI proportionally based on the width and height of the device screen which you are viewing the application. So basically scaling में ये होता है. But resizing में क्या होता है फिर? तो resizing में obviously it resizes your UI, your containers will be resized, but it will adjust based on the available width or space available in the screen. तो मेरा स्केलिंग में क्या हो जाएगा, जो कंटेनर मुझे दो दिख रहे थे मोबाइल में, वही टैबलेट में मुझे वैसे के दो ही दिखेंगे. Whereas in resizing, if you have extra space, when you change the mode to landscape, if you have the space and you can add up or add new more container in the row. तो ये resizing में you can change your UI Basically, scaling में क्या होता है? Scaling will just try to exact look जो है UI का अपन का वो maintain करने की कोशिश करेगा scaling में. Whereas in resizing, मुझे अभी resizing में कैसा होगा कि it will change based on your height and width, and it will resize along the device screen sizes. So if we want to have perfect or near to perfect responsiveness in the app, we should be using both, like scaling plus resizing. Because self scaling से क्या होगा? We won't be guaranteed that we will be having 100% responsiveness in the app. So do you guys follow? Okay. तो ये बेसिक एस्पेक्ट था मेरा कि ये टॉपिक कवर करने का कि everyone knows how the media query works, but scaling and resizing factor was two vital factors which I wanted to discuss, and I will also demonstrate later on. But yeah. So how we can achieve all these concepts in our project, right? So there are also plugins or packages available. Currently we are using Flutter Utils in one of our projects because the need for the project was कि हमारा ऐप भाई अभी पोर्ट्रेट में ही सपोर्ट करेगा, तो वो रिक्वायरमेंट टैकल करने के लिए Flutter Screen Utils package was kind of near to our solution. So we were using Flutter Utils, but Flutter Utils again is scaling. It is not giving you the resizing effect. So if I run that app in the web, let's say, then थोड़ा UI गड़बड़ हो जाएगा because there is resizing, there is scaling, not resizing. So exact UI maintain रहेगा. तो ये अपन कैसे अचीव कर सकते हैं? तो I come across very interesting library or package which is responsive framework. So वो पैकेज क्या करता है कि based on your breakpoints, it divides or it renders your UI basically based on the breakpoints. And at the same time, you can also decide whether we want to resize or scale. So that factor is also there. It's not like कि हर टाइम टैबलेट है तो अपन का स्केल होगा, रिसाइज होगा. It's not necessary all the time to have resizing or scaling. तो यूजर के नीड के बेसिस पे और डेवलपर के नीड के बेसिस पे या प्रोजेक्ट रिक्वायरमेंट के बेसिस पे we can decide which library we should follow and we should go with. So I'll show you one example. We have some issue in the project, so I'll show you what Flutter framework is, responsive framework is doing. So as you can see, you guys see this UI? Are you able to see it? So basically, it is adapting scaling as well as resizing. As you can see, when devices get enlarged, your top menus are getting scaled. When you come down to the smaller device, your top menu is getting resized. At the same time, you can decide when the जब ये टॉप मेन्यू जब रिसाइज हो रहा है तब अपन डिसाइड कर सकते हैं whether I should go with a hamburger menu और ऐसे ही दिखाना है अपन को. So that decision can developer take, and that is the core vital part of this what I found from this package. So I feel it is catering all the requirements and needs. So basically you should also try with this package. Also I wanted to cover so themes we can provide multiple themes in the Flutter project, right? So also like when we are using Visual Studio, so it is also providing the light and dark theme, right? So कुछ लोग ज़्यादा लाइट थीम पसंद करते हैं, कुछ लोग ज़्यादा डार्क थीम पसंद करते हैं. तो इसमें फ्लटर कैसे पीछे रहेगा? फ्लटर इज ऑल अबाउट कि यूजर एक्सपीरियंस अच्छा और रिच होना चाहिए, इसके लिए वो कैटर करेगा. सो फ्लटर has given the excellent visitors themes. Basically, you can provide themes at the app level, and based on the dark and light mode, you can switch between the UIs. Also, if you don't provide any code for handling themes, then Flutter takes care itself. Like it applies the default color schemes based on the light and dark theme. बट मुझे let's say मेरा क्लाइंट का रिक्वायरमेंट कुछ है कि मुझे डार्क थीम में मेरा ऐप ऐसा दिखना चाहिए, लाइट थीम में ऐसा दिखना चाहिए, ऐसे कलर कॉम्बिनेशंस होने चाहिए, तो वी कैन ऑल्सो प्रोवाइड दैट. एंड देयर आर ऑल्सो लाइक packages which can also be there in order to provide themes or change themes for the application. But मेरा एक्सपीरियंस ऐसा रहा है कि सेल्फ रिटन कोड जो है which works best for your theme changing for the app, because you have all the controlling with you, so you can change it and adapt make the changes in the code that it adapts all your clients and project requirements. So basically it will be something like this. If you have some sign up screen and you can switch between the dark and light themes. So most of the younger crowd is going with the dark theme. I don't know why, but I feel like I have some problem with my eyes, and when I switch to dark theme I get to used to like this, but in the light theme it is like, yeah, ये अच्छा है. तो Coditas is also service based, so वो उनको ये चीजें भी टैकल करनी चाहिए, और we deliver such projects where user is the core, मतलब user को center of need या center of क्या बोलते हैं, यूजर के नीड को सेंटर में रखते हुए अपन प्रोजेक्ट्स डिलीवर करते हैं. सो दिस इज द बेस्ट वे टू यूजर या क्लाइंट को अट्रैक्ट करने के लिए. दिस इज आई थिंक यू शुड गिव द ऑल द फीचरफुल एप्स. सो या so basically there are also more opportunities for Flutter in the Coditas for the fresher level as well as mid-scale level. So if anyone want to connect, you can note down this email ID, and if you have any questions you can ask. Yeah.
One aspect I feel in Flutter is that this logic what we are discussing works with mobiles as well as web. But when you move to the desktops, I see that window resize, you move the windows apart.
Okay.
I believe that the refresh is causing a lot of issues.
Okay.
You have made a lot of space. How do you handle that slide?
Actually, the library which I have shown, the responsive framework, can cater both the all your needs rather. So I'll just show you. I'm not sure why it is giving me error, but here you can see, you can specify the breakpoints based on your mobile device, tablet, desktop, and you can provide that function that you want to resize or auto scale. So I guess that will help to reach to the solution. So I would suggest to try, yeah.
Because it's not rendering in the right way.
Okay.
Dynamically, when people try to resize them, because some windows they just move it down and make it small, and then sometimes they very small. And there, when you move very small, what happens is that you can't fit your widget into that. So it gets stuck there. Means you say it will pop up with is sufficient like
Right.
errors will come. So that is how this guy takes very lows because it refresh everything. Right?
It rebuilds your UI basically based on the
There
networks.
are multiple states where your data are already filled with necessary interactive experience.
Yeah, actually desktop के लिए मैंने ये check नहीं किया, but for the tablet and phone resolutions I have tried that and it works near to best, or near to perfect. So, but yeah, we can try that and get back to you on that.
I would like to add to what you said.
Yeah, sure.
So basically, you can just use custom paint. Like I had this experience where we needed like different sizes and stuff. So what we did was there's a guy called Paris, I don't know, Retro Coder or something like that on YouTube. He's made a tool.
Okay.
So what he has is like you paste an SVG in his tool and it converts it into like custom paint. So
Okay.
basically SVGs give you the advantage that they are rendered across different devices again and again. So calculations happen, right?
Yeah.
So we can just use those resources and rather than what approach you said, so basically in that case we'll have to have 3 images, right, at different resolutions.
Right.
So that can again impact app size as well because we can
Yeah, but
have,
you can keep it on the cloud and just get it from there, right? Instead of adding it in the assets.
yeah, that's right. But like SVG are way more performant, right?
Yeah.
So we could use custom paint for that.
Okay. Yeah. So one solution is custom paint also. But sometimes it happens like you don't want to put your images on some platform. So that can also be happen, right? You don't get your converted code or you don't want to do that.
Yeah, depending on the use case.
Yes. So, thanks guys. That's why.
Thank you, Yashashree, for such an amazing and wonderful talk about responsiveness. I usually used to struggle a lot at the starting part when I had to create Flutter applications which had to support for multiple screens. But then now we can do it. So guys, before moving ahead, you can see we have a meetup link. So if you have not joined our Flutter Pune meetup group, you can just scan the QR and join our group so that when there will be next events possible, you will get notification. Also follow Flutter Pune on Twitter because we usually tweet about it. And this event is going on. I have displayed some of the hashtags and the accounts that you can tag while the event is going on. Depending on the tweets and everything, we have arranged few goodies. So we'll distribute it accordingly. So even our speakers can enjoy. And right now, our next speaker is Deven Joshi. He is a Google developer expert for Dart and Flutter. And he has adopted Flutter since 2017. So it's the beta state he is using Flutter. And if I am not mistaken, he is using Dart from almost 2013 and 14, if I am right. So today he will be speaking on custom paints in Flutter. And I'll just hand over my mic to him and let him start. Thank you.
First of all, whoever asked that last question about custom paint, thanks. That was a nice segue to my talk. So thanks for that. It's great being here. Thanks to Speed, organizing and doing everything, because I remember like first time in 2017 we were doing International Women's Day, and that was my first Flutter talk, and that was Flutter was React Native, and that time was a really contentious topic, right? It was, and it still is, but at that time all the questions you got were okay. Like you did whatever you do whatever talk you want to do, And though your questions will always be, okay, how is it better React Native? Why should I quit my Android job? And a bunch of that stuff. And you were confused because I spoke about a completely different topic. I don't know why you should quit your job, right? So it was an interesting time, let us say. And I think 2019, 2020 started when a lot of conferences were finally coming into here. Suddenly things stopped because the last thing I did was Flutter Europe, and Flutter Europe was a big one. And then ever since then, there's been plans for a whole bunch of events, but we've been stalled. And now there's like a whole community of you. There's a lot of people who are interested in Flutter, who are doing Flutter as a job maybe, because when we started it, it was very different. I was burnt out from Android, right? And I like to consider myself a maker. I like building stuff. Honestly, I don't really care about what is the most efficient way. I like to do something new. I like to, to see this is something really cool. Maybe this was done in React Native or Android or whatever it was. But you're like, okay, you know what? This is cool. I want to make this. And this is always the kind of person I've been. I like making cool stuff. I don't really care about the most efficient way to do it. And that's why CustomPaint has been one of my favorite widgets, along with a few others like Transform and stuff like that. And this is what I want to talk about. And so, overall, just to give a small brief about me, I guess, because you have to do it. I am a Google developer expert for Flutter. It's currently on Twitter, that title is contentious, let's not talk about it much. But my main job is I'm a developer advocate at Stream. So I was also an engineer, a proper Flutter engineer with a few companies, and then I was an SDK developer for Stream for around 1.5 years now. And the community had much more value later on. I was kind of bored with API engineering at some point, so I was like, okay, let's go developer advocacy. And it's been quite a fun ride. At Stream, we develop mostly chat and feeds APIs, so if you want to integrate, like a whole chat interface or feeds, like Twitter feeds kind of stuff. We supply all of that, and I am mostly on the SDK development side, and now the developer advocacy side, so it's been really fun to interact with all of the different SDKs. And every time I do a different video or an article or just shout out or go to any other conference, I miss Flutter a lot because you go there and you're like, oh, that's sad. And this is like a bit on me. And so today I really want to talk about CustomPaint, right? So first and most obvious question, why are we talking about CustomPaint? So every framework, every OS has something called a Canvas API. If you go back, the PTSD of your computer graphics class, right? You see these triangles, you see these OpenGL classes and whatever. Stuff you never understood but did for your assignments, right? And you see these drawing these triangles and stuff, but technically that's what all UI is made of, lower level graphics. So CustomPaint really is important for two reasons. One, it exposes the Canvas API for Flutter, and second, so CustomPaint is really important for Flutter itself. And I'm going to throw this to you for a bit. So, question for you now. Just shout it out, don't worry about too much. What are the major differences between Android and Flutter? This is not to defame Android, just letting you know. So, any major differences between Android and Flutter?
Declarative.
Correct. So, one is declarative, let's ignore compose, it doesn't exist. So, any others?
Cross-platform.
Cross-platform. So, Android does not run on any other platforms. But one of the most important ones, and really why they
It rebuilds the scheme.
Right. I think that's more of an artifact of the declarative thing rather than because technically because you have essentially handles to each view component in Android, you can refresh that. So but yeah, for sure, it is an artifact of a difference. And the real question, I think, you said cross-platform, right? So the question is, why is it cross-platform, right? Why is Android cross-platform while Flutter is not?
Yeah, Flutter handles its own painting and Android doesn't.
Perfect. So what Flutter does is something very different from Android. All Flutter apps are just a giant canvas. There is nothing that is imperatively defined. There is no button. For example, maybe you had an old Android phone, right? Maybe you had an Android phone, I don't know, maybe you were KitKat, then you went to Lollipop, and then you were Google. all the buttons on the exact same apps look very different. Why? Because those buttons are defined in the OS. These buttons are not defined by the Android framework. The Android app does not contain what the buttons look like. The Android app just says, I have a button over here. And the Android OS tells them, okay, this is what your button looks like. So that's why when we upgrade the Android OS, you may see, like those, I forgot what ink splashes, or you may see different kinds of buttons, many different fields, even almost different navigation. So Android apps look different with every OS, regardless of whether the Android app updates or not, because the UI components are held by the Android framework, not by the Android app. So the OS owns the UI components. Whereas what Flutter does is completely different. They're like, what, we want to be independent from Android. We'll take it completely away. What we'll do is, we'll remember how to paint a button. We'll remember actually how to draw this whole thing ourselves, so we don't have to depend on you. So what Flutter does is, every single component is drawn on a canvas. So the triangle thing, again, computer graphics, that is done, but on a much, much higher level. Every single button, every single image is now painted onto a canvas that you get. And now, widgets, what are widgets? Widgets are nothing but configuration. We will see that in a minute. But that is what is special in Flutter. Since everything is held inside the Flutter app, since everything is defined by the Flutter app, it doesn't need the OS. The same app will look the same. The app will look the same regardless whatever Android version it's on. It doesn't care. It doesn't care if it's an iOS or Android, because everything it's doing is doing on a canvas. So it does not care. Now, similarly, so you have three. I'm not going to do much. I don't really care. So there's three trees that we have in Flutter. One is the widget, element, and render object. Forget the element right now, not a concern. So you must be familiar with one of them, maybe two of them if you're really smart. But the widget, what does the widget do? The widget has some information. That's it. The widget does not do any drawing. The widget has nothing at all. That's what you have to remember. The widget just has your information. Okay? So for example, if I say this icon should be this thing, the widget only stores, okay, this is the icon I have to use. It has no clue what the icon is. Okay? It has no clue what to paint on the screen, and neither does it actually paint on the screen. Widgets are just configuration. Elements are basically it's an optimization thing, but the main heavy worker is the render object. So the render object actually renders something on the screen. It's clunky, it's hard to rebuild, it's hard to do basically everything. This is why Flutter is relatively optimized, and this is where I can also make a case for using set state, because that's a different story, but set state won't actually rebuild your entire screen. Even if you hear okay, set state will rebuild your entire screen, it won't. It will actually look at the element, it will look at the configuration. If nothing's changed, it will let the render object be. That's why Flutter is rebuilt so many times. Again, not the topic today, but that's what I wanted you to know. So, now again a question for you, I think. Have you ever looked at the source code of common widgets? Show of hands. How many of you have gone into the source code of common widgets? Again, there's 5, 6 hands, right? 7. Vivek, I'm assuming you are going to have, if you don't have many questions. Okay. So, now, let's go to a very simple one, right? Text. I think it's the easiest to define as the first one you do. The counter app or whatever it is, the first one you actually go into. So, okay. What is, whoever raised your hands, keep this in mind. Remember your answer. Now, below text, what is the first widget or render object that you find?
Can you repeat the question?
So, in the source code of text, what is it? What is there? There's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Rich text. So, what we're talking about is that even text is composed of other stuff. There's multiple layers into this, and now how it goes, what we'll do is, so before we actually go into CustomPaint, I want to show you why it's important and how everything really uses CustomPaint. So we'll go into text, right? So this is your basic text. It's very daunting. It says text and then hello world, right? That's it. That's really all the information you have to give. You have styling, you have alignments, and you have a bunch of stuff. So it's technically complex widget, but for now, we're just going to go with this, right? So again, very harmless, right? Doesn't do anything. Once you go inside, the project I wanted to show you a lot of stuff, just read it out of it. But once you go inside the text widget, you will find something called a rich text widget, what they told. Now, rich text is actually a widget you can use regardless. Rich text is not something that is confined to text. You can use rich text as a normal widget without using text at all. But when you go into text, you will find rich text. What is rich text? It's very simple, really. it can basically split parts of text and give it different styling. Okay, so text also has a text.rich constructor which you can use for the same. But point is, it's still a widget. Internally, text uses rich text. Now, why? Because it allows it to do some more things, right? So that's all you need to do. But again, still no painting here. Again, I'm talking about it's going to paint something. There's still no painting. It's just a widget with some text lines. So again, not much of a thing. Now we go into one more layer. Inside the rich text is when we hit our first render object. So this is a render paragraph, and you suddenly realize we started out with one simple thing. We just said hello world, right? We didn't say anything else. There's too many parameters for that hello world, right? So there's too many things. The render paragraph is the first render object you get, and we're just 3 layers in. And now the render paragraph, it does a lot more of the stuff. Have you ever heard constraints go down, sizes go up, right? That kind of principle is exhibited by the render object. So it will determine your intrinsic sizes and a whole bunch of stuff. So this is not just showing text, it's determining where that text is going to be positioned, what that text is going to look like, what size is it going to occupy, what line is it going to have. So there's a lot of stuff it has to do. But when you use a text widget, you are really oblivious to it. You don't really care. What is obvious to you is, I want to show this text on the screen. But what it is doing inside is, how big is that text going to be? What is the size in between those two words, hello world? And there's a lot of stuff which we just don't see because it's abstracted among a lot of stuff. When you go inside the render object, you will see something called a text painter. A text painter, now finally we're getting to some paint kind of vocabulary. A text painter has a lot of stuff like text directions, scale factors, if there's an overflow, what's the style. But again, see, even if it's named the text painter, it's still not painting anything yet, right? So the point is, we're like, what, 4 levels down, and we still haven't hit it. There's 4 layers of abstraction just in the rendering text, right? So you are a text painter, and you may not be able to see the last line. I cannot see the last line. So it's text painter paint. So there is a call to dot paint in the text painter, and now one more layer, which is the actual paint method. And after all of that, after going 5 layers deep, the last line is what we're actually concerned with. So canvas.dom paragraph. So your question was, this is what we wanted to achieve. Why go through that many steps? This is the canvas API. This is what is actually drawing stuff on a screen. So if you use an image widget, it will use canvas or draw image. It will use other stuff. So internally, all widgets are using the Canvas API. You just don't know it because there's too much abstraction, as you just saw. But the point is, it's not just that, because you have to deal with so much more. You don't just have to deal with where the text is. You have to see, okay, how big is that widget? Is it centered? What alignment is it? Is it overflowing? Then we have to add ellipses. There's so much stuff that a lot of the parameters in the render paragraph and the later on the text painter will define that you just don't have to deal with. So what I want to take, what you take away from this is that all the widgets you use are just abstractions to make it easier for you to do something like this. To actually not deal with all of this and have defaults defined, have a lot of stuff defined, and you don't have to do it again and again and again. So the actual stuff is done by the render paragraph, the render object, and inside the text thing. So point is, everything. Remember how everything was a widget, now everything is a canvas, right? So now this is how Flutter uses canvas internally. Now, what is CustomPaint first of all? So CustomPaint isn't exactly the canvas API. CustomPaint is a widget. CustomPainter is what allows us to paint something. CustomPaint is a widget that basically creates a canvas for you on the screen. Why do you need that? Because everything you build will be with widgets otherwise, right? It might be some kind of fancy thing, you want to build a button, you'll have to maybe, take a container, round it off, do a whole bunch of stuff. Funnily enough, if you go into the container source code, there is no render object. It just has 5 different normal widgets inside it and just like defaults to whatever you're using. So if you're using size, it adds a size box and stuff like that. So that's why people tell you don't use container, use size box, because internally that's doing the same thing, you're just adding one more layer for no reason. So in CustomPaint, it's just defining a canvas for you. This is important because you can do a lot of stuff with it. You can create a lot of customized buttons. Imagine, let's say, book my show. You have a ticketing kind of interface. A ticket has a very distinct shape. At the end, you have a finite edge. I don't know what it's called, but you have an edge that is very different looking, and you can't create it with any simple widget. And what I personally use it for is my own experiments. I don't really care about Flutter UI as such, but if I see something really cool, then this is the easiest way to do it, because no widget is going to be able to do it for you. So again, I have no clue how much you're able to see, but essentially the custom paint is just a widget. Don't worry about it, we define it, forget about it. The main thing is a custom painter implementation. So we make a custom painter class, let's say demo painter extend custom painter, and then we have two methods, which are the important ones: paint and should repaint. Paint is basically where we say what we want to paint. Let's say, I want to draw a circle, a line, whatever. And should repaint is an optimization thing, where basically the screen labels, right? The screen labels, and then the framework comes and asks the custom painter, the screen is rebuilding. Do you want to rebuild as well? Because if nothing has changed on the custom painter end, why should it rebuild it all, right? So basically what it says is, then we can add, okay, let's say I have a color that I'm drawing. I use drawing and painting, both are the exact same thing in this context only. But effectively, if I'm drawing a circle and coloring it red, in that red, if now let's say the color password is blue, if that's changed, then yes, I want to repaint. Otherwise, I don't really care about repainting. Please don't repaint, otherwise you're going to repaint. So that's going to be expensive. So basically, we want to do it. So yeah, this is the basic custom painting. Paint and should repaint. Again, these are main methods. Everything else is just basic. Like, custom paint is just exposes. Custom paint is very fast. This demo painter too, and paint and repaint should repaint are our main methods. Okay. This I've added for the sake of completeness, because if anybody who wants to try building widgets using these, then you also need to define hit testing. What is hit testing? So if you define, there's a button. You click on it, the button needs to know you clicked on it, right? So what does the button do? Effectively it says, okay, I have a rectangle. In that rectangle, if the pointer is there, then it defines a hit, right? So this is used in many gesture detection, many kinds of gesture detection and so forth. So in this, if you're defining a custom, if you're making a custom widget, then you need to define hit testing. So there is a method called hit test, and you basically, it gives you a position and asks you, okay, this is the position the user has clicked on. Is this inside your widget? If you say yes, that means it's valid. If it's not, then that means there is no hit test. That means there is no hit to that thing, and any gesture arena or any gesture detector will not be alerted. So that is a very, very important thing if you're making custom widgets. Small thing, if you do end up making custom widgets and you plan to use them a lot, prefer using render object or render object widget, because that's much more effective, but it's much harder to just make a basic implementation of this one and then switch to render objects, because they're much more efficient. Wow, this is bad. Okay, so essentially there is something called paint. So paint is when you're actually drawing an object, you need to define how it looks, right? So let's say I want a blue thing, and this is completely invisible, but there's an outline here. So let's say I'm drawing a circle, and that's either filled or empty. And then if I'm drawing a line, how do I want the edges to look? Do I want it to be rounded, or do I want it to be straight or flattened, or whatever it is? And here, again, it's slightly blurry. It's not, I don't know if it's visible, but it's slightly blurry. So do I want that to be blurred? So paint is a very, very weird thing where you define all this. You can define color, style, if anti-erasing is available, if you want to invert colors, stroke weight, and so forth, or even a mask filter with a blur. I think that's the only mask filter we have available right now. So you can define a lot of stuff in the paint object, and that basically defines that whatever shape or whatever you're drawing, that's how it will look. This is blurred. If you draw a line that will have the round stroke cap, it will be filled or not filled or whatever. So that's what paint effectively defines. And this is what you need paint for drawing anything on a canvas, more or less, except clearing. Okay, so basic shapes are pretty simple. When I say pretty simple, I still don't like them. This is still not as simple as it should be, but we'll get to that later. So if you're drawing a line, what should you do? You define P1, you define P2, you define the paint. In this paint, I'm defining a color as blue and stroke width as 5. and then I'm just saying canvas or draw line. Okay, so the paint method gives us a canvas, we use that to draw a line. So we give them P1 and P2, and we define a paint, and it draws it. So this is the basic line. Similar, there'll be like a, okay, so there's a center and there's a paint, and there's a radius. And then we're just using canvas to draw a circle, and that will draw a point or a circle for you. So these are basic shapes, but again, I'm still not, when I was doing them, I didn't like the verbosity of a lot of things. And this is still a lot to do for drawing a simple line. So we'll come to that later. I drew a Batman over there by just canvas or draw arc. So basically, drawing an arc is a bit weird. So you have to define the rect. You have to define a rectangle for this. And then you have to define how much, like what is the start angle, what is the end angle, and then just define the paint. So the paint is just going to be yellow, and yeah, that's it. So there's going to be yellow paint, this is the start angle, that's the end angle, and then this is the rectangle I want that contain in. And then similarly, you can have draw widget and stuff, so say draw image and stuff, and drawing image again, internally images drawn like this. So a lot of stuff can be done with this. For example, if you ever make games with it, or if you use Flame or whatever, you may use something called sprite sheets. Now sprite sheets will have hundreds of images, and there's also draw image atlases or whatever. So you can have 100 images, and then you can just pick which ones you want to alternate between and stuff like that. So any sprite sheets, or you can do vertices, you can do a bunch of stuff with the basic call. So canvas.whatever, that is a basic call. Now, I don't really care about explaining this, but basically this is just how to draw basic text. I just wanted to, since you were talking about text, I wanted to take it back. This is all the coding just for the absolute basic implementation of text, and yeah, no, it's not pretty, but that's why you should do it this way. But you can draw text with it using the same call. One of the most important one is paths. So paths allow you to kind of define a complex path. This is a very simple one. But you can basically say, okay, move to 0.0, line to 100 or 100, then again 0, 100, and then line to 0, 0, or you can just close it off and it will be fine. So you basically what you define is a nice triangle, and then you just use canvas to draw path, it draws the path for you. So it's basically yellow paint, some stroke width, and then we define the points, and it adds a path. This is important because paths are probably one of the most important things in CustomPaint, because they can allow you to do much more complex stuff. You can add complex curves to it, so you can add quadratic Bayesians, you can add connects, you can add a whole bunch of stuff. So those things are only available in this. But again, something I don't like is the verbosity, because you have control points, you have the main points, it's very complex in terms of drawing. This is much worse. So there's something called layers. If you work with Photoshop, if you work with any animation software, you will have groups or layers, right? So you'll have a bunch of stuff which will be connected to each other. So if you modify one thing, the whole entire section will move. So these are layers, and similarly you can also add layers here. But the issue is, it's a very tricky implementation. I do not ever get it right on the first try. Because what you have to do is, you have to draw something, canvas.save. Now the save does not make any sense to me, canvas.save, then you do something on another thing, then canvas is restored. You have to keep a mental stack. Okay, this is a layer I'm working on, that is a layer I'm working on. Instead of that, just having even like a layer numbering or just anything better could have been simpler, but no. So they have just made like two. It's a bad example, but there's like two different examples where there's two objects, and the green one, and those are like this. They will move differently from this one, the green one. So you can add layers, and basically, this is a very simple example, but it still has quite a lot of context, like a lot of text to it, right? So what I ended up doing was, every time I get a problem, I get depressed for a bit, then I pick a solution which takes way more time than the original solution would have. So what I did was, there's an easier way to do custom paint. There's a lot of issues with it. I named it Etch. You can find it the same way in the Flutter Dev directly. Now here the problems with CustomPaint, it doesn't feel like Flutter. First of all, it's an imperative API, what is canvas.this thing, and it's not a Flutter API, simple as that. So it's not declarative, it doesn't feel natural to use in Flutter directly. Paint is something I really don't like. Paint has this weird pattern. We use cascades, so that's not a better pattern, but we use this weird filter pattern in Paint, and it's just something I don't like. It's weird to define. It's very Java-like, and not that I hate Java, I don't really like it either. Direct offsets are like, now usually I think we had a talk on responsiveness, right? So usually we don't really care about 100-100, right? As in the point of 100-100. That means nothing to us. What actually means something to us? A third of the screen, right? Half of the screen. So actually aligning it with the screen height and width is something that we care about much more rather than just having an arbitrary point. Because we can't just say, okay, draw this box over here. What do we have to say? Draw this box to the center of the screen, or draw this in 1/3 of the screen. So those things are important to us, and in CustomPaint you just apply offsets, which you may need to do for some things, but they don't make sense. They don't make sense in a lot of other stuff. Layers are hard to use. Layers make no sense. Layers, like, you have to get a mental stack to actually have something on the screen, right? So you have to have a lot of mental overhead just to actually do something. And animations are hard. Animations are one of my favorite things in Flutter, and doing them is an absolute nightmare. And I don't need any, honestly. There is a way to do it efficiently. There is just not a way to do it well. You can technically supply a super animation kind of thing, but it doesn't. It just doesn't do it well. It just does it efficiently. So first of all, this is what I did. First of all, make it declarative. So essentially, you can just add. So first of all, you have an edge canvas. So that replaces your custom paint. Inside that, you have the elements, which is my edge circle. This is the center. This is the radius. There is no implicit need to define paint, but you can as well. I'm also made paint much better because I don't like the original one. But again, the bottom one, just sizing it, this doesn't really matter. This is the only thing that matters. So edge circle, a center and a radius makes much more sense. You don't have, and this is a direct widget by the way. You don't have to define a custom paint, then custom painter, then you have to paint and should repaint. This will automatically take care of if it should repaint or should not repaint. So you don't have to worry about that. So if you want to draw a circle, you just do edge circles and then radius, and then you have a circle on the screen. Not like the same, like I don't know how many times. Alignments is something I really wanted to do. So for example, I didn't really care about, instead of doing, I want to offset 100-100, instead of that, I was like, what if we actually do alignments? Meaning, my center is aligned to 0-0. 0-0 is the center, okay? And if it's -1, then it's the top left, +1 is the bottom right. And this is how the entire circle will move. And I don't have to then calculate, do a media query or something, or pass along the size, calculate where my top left is, where my bottom right is. Top left is 0-0, but like, you get the point, the bottom right, or where the 1/3 of my screen is. Automatically, alignment just does it for you. You don't have to calculate centers or whatever like that. So alignments is done. So bars is something I really wanted to do. There's no way to do easy bars, but what I wanted to do was use alignments to define bars better. So you can have, honestly I can't get it at this point. But basically you can have, polygons, you can have, you don't have an unnecessary number of layers, you can add very easy ways, and plus, since you can now define alignments, it's very easy for you to define from where to where. And there's one more feature in which I add relative paths, where if you start something at this point, it will add a relative point. So this is now 0-0, and now compared to this point, where it happens. So it was much easier to do it directly, and there it was my absolute favorite feature. You saw how big that your course method was. So in this case, what it was simple. How many of you have used a transform widget? Just here. Okay. So the transformation just allows you to transform something, right? So it allows you to rotate and stuff like maybe rotate, scale, translate. So I was like, let's make it in that sense. So now there's an edge layer element, an edge layer rotate, edge layer translate, and you can automatically shift, translate, rotate, whatever. And now all the elements of that layer are similar to how we would use it when we use a canvas. But now they will automatically adhere to the transformation you set for it. So in this case, that's rotation. You do not have to use all the save and restore kind of callbacks. You don't really have to remember what you've done, what the elements are. And plus, again, you use the top level, all the alignments as you can. The bottom part again is just the size. So that was it about Etch, I think. Now, what have I actually done with custom paint? So I love doing generative art. One of my favorite things to do with Flutter is generative art. So I was bad at everything, mostly colors, paints, intermediate and elementary C grades, so represent. And then I was like, you know what? But I like math and I like code. So what I made was I made procedurally generated art, which this is all custom paint Flutter, right? So this one of those that's my own creation. This is something you may recognize. So that's something called the matter growth set. And the matter growth set, how we do it is actually, this involves maths, okay? I'm not just saying just custom paint, it has a lot of math in it. But the matter growth set, how you do it is effectively this function. You crunch it again and again and again until you either reach 0 or infinity. Some value, like localized value or some infinity value. And that's what the dark and green colors are. I tweaked these 0 values to give like a whole feel where actual like nodes interconnect. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I did, like there's 100 of these. But you could do a bunch of custom paint kind of art, and this is one of my favorite things to do because you're just exploiting this math that you're using to do something much better. And plus, if you're bad at art and painting like I am, this is amazing to me, right? This is a proud viewer because you never think that would come from you. And this is one of my so this is transform plus custom paint is one you. And I think it works. Yeah. So I did a laser effect from iMessage, this thing, and then there was another one which had a heart, I think. Yeah. So similar to iMessage. I don't know if you can see it, but it actually put the reflection of the message on the heart and whatever. But these are super cool effects to create because you actually have to do a whole bunch of stuff, and it's fun. If you get it wrong, you cry a bit, but that's fine. In this case, you actually have to define all these triangles, how they go, what the thing is, what the blur is, and how they interrelate to each other. And even then, there's a gradient between there's no greenish color there, there's greenish color here. So it's quite a complex UI, but it's very fun to make if you do it right. And it's disastrous if you get it wrong. So, these are kind of my experimental custom apart from art and stuff. So yeah, that is something I really like doing. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. You'll find I'm mostly active on Twitter. I have recently been pretty sad on Medium. I do a lot of blog posts and everything. So you can follow me there. I have a GitHub, I do use it, but Twitter is the main active thing. But I'm happy to take any questions you have about custom paint. Good?
So, you in the meet mentioned that custom painter has this issue with animation inefficiency. You can elaborate the part more. How is it inefficient to use custom painter?
So when I said inefficient, the basic implementation, right? So basically, if you're doing imagine there's a widget, right? For now, there's a widget that's flying around the screen. Now, that widget can change position anywhere, but the widget still remains the same. So if Flutter is directly building it, that widget won't be rebuilt, it will just be sized, it will just be positioned differently. So the widget itself is repainted. Whereas, if you now do that exact same animation where you're drawing it yourself, then you're destroying the thing, you're drawing it again, you're destroying the thing, you're drawing it. But that image doesn't really persist. So, what happens is, Flutter has so the elements I described are essentially inflated widgets, and they just get removed. Whereas with custom paint, you will draw that every time, right? So you will draw that every time, and that may be inefficient. So there are some optimizations to this which are dealing with raster cache, which you can actually do. So basically, I think there's a parameter you can set called is complex. What that means is, if it's too complex, then it will adjust its caching accordingly. And then I think there's something called will change or something like that. Basically, what that means is, will this change in the next layer? If it's next label, if it will, then it won't bother caching with it. Internally, there are some heuristic it applies to actually see itself. Like you don't need to do it yourself. It will see, okay, is it worth caching? Will it change? It has some heuristics for that. But essentially, if you're repainting it yourself every time, then it's going to be rather inefficient. So then you need to do those optimizations that Flutter does yourself, or you create a render object and then do them do that in the Flutter way. But Flutter will take care of the optimizations, and you will just be taking care of the drawing. That's why I said render object which might be a better choice for you.
Also, regarding the part that you mentioned that there is a way to keep custom paint a bit efficient. I guess that's a part of your treatment. Yes or no?
the part I mentioned about there is a way to make two efficient animations.
Yeah.
Okay. So the super constructor of the basic custom painter thing, you can actually pass along, I think, your animated values to that, and to my knowledge, it makes it more efficient. I don't personally do it that much, so I can go into details as to how it does it, but there is a super constructor that does it. You can just pass on your animation through, and it will take care of itself. So that makes the animation more efficient rather than you setting state and pre-painting it and then deciding logic yourself.
And also just want to clarify the whole point that you mentioned. So there are some possible case studies, scenarios where custom painter animation might be maybe more efficient. But there can be other cases where you actually have to redraw something which you don't have to change at all. And if you try to use custom painter in that the animation way, it might become inefficient because every time you have to draw that part again and again.
Yes, kind of. So in a sense, look, there's a way to do everything well and badly, right? You can use any, people will fight about state management and still do their favorite state management really badly, right? So last time I was at a company once, and their screen was rebuilding 1500 times in one frame, and then they're like, do we need to change state management? And no, you have to actually see what you're doing wrong. And with 4 lines of code, I brought it down to 8, which is still pretty bad, but not as bad as 1500. So the thing is, in that case, it really depends on what kind of implementation you're making. In the sense that if you have something that's very complex and in the sense that you can't rebuild with, because for example, let's say you have an implementation that uses a lot of clipping and you have anti-aliasing and stuff like that, you might have a better custom paint implementation, but it's very, very easy to do it wrong. It's very easy to do it in a way that is much worse than builders are. So, for example, if you're a card, if you're from, I forget the types, but essentially, if you do anti-aliasing wrong or if you do some other stuff wrong, it's very easy. But in most cases, you'll find an implementation that at least matches. Sometimes, in specific circumstances, goes even better than builders will. But you have to make sure that you're not just rebuilding something that is not meant to be rebuilt, or maybe you're missing out on something that Flutter already does, but you're not doing anymore. So you have to be cognizant of that. And then obviously, if you don't go to any of that, you render objects, but they're more tricky to do because then even I don't fully understand the amount of sizes that they have. So.
Also, one more question I had is, you mentioned in the talk that using paths is a bit tricky, and I believe it gets more tricky when you go into layers. So what do you feel in your experience? How do you think one should approach the overall building stuff if they have to use layers and paths as well?
So, look, I find it really a good way really hard. The reason I built the other thing is because I really didn't find a very easy way to do it. In the sense that, why I like the declarative, so people might just ask this, not everything is meant to be declarative. I agree, but the issue with that is that I could not split all this, so the parts you're talking about, if you use them in layers, you would rather have them separated and you would rather have like a modular chunk of the layer. But in this case, you just can't do it. How will you separate it very easily without writing it in the same thing? And it becomes like a big, monolith where you have all the parts and layers and everything in the same thing. And then you have to remember what layer is on because you're using a stack view, you're using a store and save to do it. And that's why I genuinely did not find it very easy. Maybe there is, maybe I'm just ignorant, but it's just that, I didn't find a very easy way to separate those layers apart from just making some I made a class, I made some methods that did it, but even then you have to pass on everything that you have, right? You have to pass on your canvas, your size, everything to that method to that even calculate, and it still looks very bad. So, in my experience, working with layers is horrible, but worse is having layers and transformations because you will usually have a layer, transformations, So, yeah, in my sense, I'm not going to give you a bad answer, so I'll just say I don't know, but then I can see a very good way to do it. But that's why I built the other thing just so that I have a mental peace of it.
And procedures of those that you go through when you are trying to work with them.
Funnily enough, there was no transforms or layers, if you believe it or not. Because the thing is, when you make generative art, in general, it's actually pretty few lines of code. Because the thing is, you're not really doing something fancy. What you're trying to do is, there is some intricacy in math, right? The Mandelbrot set. It's a simple function, right? It's one function. Maybe you're reiterating it, or maybe you're doing it recursively. But it, funnily enough, has no layering in terms of custom paint. It has layers in terms that there are different functions I use for each layer, but I'm just painting it on top. There is not really, I'm just doing basic different iterations which just paint the entire thing. I don't have to worry about doing this transforming that layer individually. So in generative part actually it doesn't pop up much, but in the last example that did definitely pop up. But how I dealt with that is I used the transform vision directly. So I'm much more comfortable with matrix code directly and the transform vision rather than it's inefficient, I agree. But the thing is, I'm much better using that because it gives me like a technical easy way to store my transformations rather than having it in a single file. And yeah, that using just like CustomPaint plus transforms in that case gave me a better way to do it.
What, according to you, if you were a novice, how would you approach something that you showed on screen? Like, for example, that art effect or something like that. Because you don't actually know, right, that this function will be used or that function will be used. So, how do you approach that?
So, I mean, initially I started out with just like, I mean, I'm assuming you've done some UI challenges or something like you just recreating some UI. And how you deal with that is, it's kind of tricky. So how I personally dealt with that is I started out with initial just UI challenges, just say basic what's happening, create this, create that. You first of all learn the widgets that get you there. Okay, you can't do this with container or whatever, it's just not possible. So you have to learn transform, custom paint, and really when I say transform, I don't mean the transform dot rotate or whatever, that is not going to work. You need to learn the matrix code transform, right? So unless you learn those, and then animations, no implicit animations, don't use that, don't ever use implicit animations in any circumstance. So explicit animations, transforms, and matrix custom paint. So those three things, once those are set, then you can actually start doing this. Then it really depends on starting out slow. But initially, always know the tools. If you don't know the tools, you're going to have like a really bad implementation with it. And you can still have a bad implementation here. I'm not saying mine are the most efficient, not even close. But it's just that if you don't learn those basic ones, it's going to be really difficult. So first of all, in terms of steps, first learn the whole utility, right? Like learn animations, learn like custom paint and transform in its matrix code form, not as rotate and skew and whatever form. Then learn your basic shape, learn actual like just easy custom paint transformations, and then use your stack or use whatever you use very efficiently. In that case, you just it's more a matter of trial and there's no real game. But yeah, that's my only advice. First of all, just know your tools, try some small things, and then maybe you can do better ones. And yeah, there's always some things that are much harder than you think they are, and some which come really easy, and you're surprised how your code ran. But you cannot have to go with that. So sorry if I don't have a complete answer, but that's really all I can give you.
Thanks.
Anything else? Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Deven, for such a wonderful talk and the wonderful topic. I usually don't play with paints, but I'll surely try your paints package. It will really help me and simplify most of the things. So it was a small session for quiz and it was good. Next speaker, like I'm excited a lot for this. Vivek Yadav, he is also a Google developer expert and he's come all the way from Mumbai to here to present his talk. So give him a round of applause. He is Zest money, and his topic of today will be how you will convert or migrate your existing native application into Flutter. So this is one of the most important topics because usually we have a lot of applications already built in native code like Android and iOS, and now you are shifting to Flutter, but you don't want to rebuild the application again from scratch. So how you can use your native code and convert or migrate an application to the Flutter app.
Thank you. Okay, before we start, can everyone scan this code? So this is a very small code from 20 meters. So it will ask you very few questions. What is your experience with Flutter? And then there is another question. There's two questions. Yeah, sorry. You can scan this code. not working?
It's working.
It is working.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So in that case,
And we need the next slide.
yes, yeah. You can go to this Meti.com and use code 48573622. So there are two questions. First one is what is your experience with Flutter, and second one is how many apps have you built in Flutter? Okay. Okay, cool. So we can see a lot of people are at beginner level. Okay, and this topic is something which you can understand at beginner level, but you can fully understand when you are at advanced or the other level. Okay, and one more thing to remember that the first two talks, the first one responsiveness and second the CustomPaint is very important if you are doing this migrating. Okay. During this migration, you will need, I guess, you have to collect all of your experience, you have to go to picture all of your Flutter knowledge to do this migration. Well, task is pretty hard, not for developers, but for some other stakeholders. So we'll cover that. Cool. So I guess, yeah, we understood that we have beginner guys here. Okay. So if you have any question, raise your hand. Okay. If you're not able to understand a very specific thing or very small thing, just raise your hand and ask. Okay? Good? So, yeah, hey guys, welcome to this talk, Migrating Flutter, where we will see how you can migrate your native apps into Flutter. And the agenda is simple. First, we will see why do we need migration. Then, we'll see some migration approach, then migration planning. This particular thing is very crucial, okay? And then Q&A, okay? And in between, if you have any question, just raise your hand, okay? Don't wait for Q&A. Cool. So my name is Vivek. I am lead developer at Zest, global developer expert for Flutter, community leader at Flutter Mumbai and India Flutter. And yeah, well, I help guys in lot of other frames, for example, mentor, trainer, or anything you can ask. And you can connect me on Vivek. Okay. Yeah. So this is very important, which I guess I have framed for myself. That Flutter is the best platform to build applications for iPhones and Android. I'm not including other platforms right now. It is best for iPhones and Android. And the topic is migration. Okay. So first thing, why do you need to migrate your app? Okay, your application is already working fine. Okay, for example, my Responsiveness app was already good with 5 million users. Then why do they need to migrate their app into Flutter? Right? अगर कुछ चीज सही चल रहा है, तो coders को advice दिया जाए कि इसको हाथ मत करो. Right? So in this case, why are we doing that? Okay. The first reason is UI and UX with minimal development. Okay. So these three topics are not for developers. These are for companies, PMs, product managers. Okay. So the first thing is UI and UX with minimal development. Your product manager will come to you and will say that this is the design which designer has made. अब इसको तो बनाओ Flutter में, अब इसको बनाओ तो Android या iOS में. So that particular thing or that particular complex design is very easy to build in Flutter. And I guess example you have seen from Deven. Okay. The second is reduced cost. Because Flutter is cross-platform application development tool, that means you have to write your code once and it will run for both platforms. And easy releases, yes, you have to code once and you have to manage the release only one time. And yeah, this is for developers that, yes, while working with Flutter, we get a very fast performance of outputs, okay? The APK or IPK, whichever we generate, is very fast, okay, as compared to little, if we have very large models, okay? And then developer productivity, or developer or extract, we all know, okay? So yeah, these are the points. We can consider while doing migration, okay? If you don't have anything in this thing, okay, don't migrate. Yeah.
I just wanted to kind trying to get a clarification on the part where you mentioned about the fast performance. Because native platform apps generally are performant and work at an application.
Yeah. So, yeah, there was a disclaimer that if you have a large module, then it will give you fast performance. Because if this is your Android, okay, then you have a Flutter layer, and top of that a Flutter application is running. Okay. So, for example, let's take this one application, which is just UI UX. Okay. It does not have many platform related things. And right now we have almost 10 to 20 features. Okay. If I go and run this thing into Android, okay, it will connect, contact with platform every time, right? But for Flutter, it will not do that. It will just render its UI, and we know that rendering is much better in Flutter because of scale. So if you have large models, then you will see the difference. Otherwise, native is not the best. Okay. Good. So any other question on why do we need migration? Okay. Then migration approach. So this is again second most important thing. Okay. Because हमने डिसाइड कर लिया CEO को बता दिया कि हम migrate कर रहे हैं. But अब कैसे कर रहे हैं? So for that we have three approach. The first one is fully conversion. Okay. So in fully conversion, what we do? We discard our current app, okay, and we start fresh Flutter application, okay. So basically, let's say I had an application with 3-4 features, and then my CEO comes and tells me that I'm going to choose Flutter. So in that case, we call it fully converted, okay, which is very rare in case of product because the product is already in market, okay, and that's where we go for a hybrid approach. So in hybrid approach, first one is hybrid conversion in native. Okay, so let's say that your application is already in market with native features. Okay, now you have decided that you will migrate. Okay, so now consider that you already have native features. So will you discard whole native feature or just one feature or any new feature? No, right? So in that case, what you will do? You will keep your native app. Okay, you will add your new feature. Basically, you will build a new feature into Flutter, and then you will add that into your native app. Okay. So what it will do? Slowly, okay. For the user, okay, they will start getting Flutter application. Okay. At first, 19 features will be let's say Android, and one in Flutter. Okay. After 3 months, 19 is in Android and 10 is in Flutter. Okay. Similarly, after 6 to 9 months or even say 1 year, after 1 year you will say that I have fully migrated into Flutter. Okay. So that's hybrid approach first one. And second, the hybrid approach in Flutter. Okay, this is important because let's say that you have 3 crucial features or modules already built in native, right? Now you are starting a new, or I can say the whole new Flutter app, right? But if your application is already in market, again you cannot discard your existing application, right? So in that case, you will create a new application in Flutter and you will put your native modules into Flutter app and then you will ship it. Okay. So why these 3 different approaches are required? So that your product team, okay, they can always ensure that your customers have a test app, okay, and as a developer you also get that incremental change, okay. Okay, any question on this approach? Okay, and all of these are my experience, okay. You can have your own experience as well, you can have your own words as well, okay. So never consider that this is a concrete solution. Good. Migration planning. So yeah, now what is migration planning? So that okay. So we have decided we are going to migrate. We have decided which approach we are going to use. Okay. Then comes this thing, migration planning. Okay. Now at the start of presentation I have told you that this is the most important thing. Okay. While doing this migration, and the reason is okay. If you have not planned a migration on paper or in Jira or whatever, okay. If you have not planned it well, you will end up in disaster. Okay. I see that, okay, and that's why it is very important. Now, why it is again more important? Because there are multiple stakeholders who are there for this migration plan. First one is your PM, product manager. Second one is project manager, and third one is your customer. Okay, you are constantly saying them that we are going to give you some new feature, Okay, but if you are not planning well, you will not be able to deliver that. Okay, so while planning this migration, we have to keep few things in mind. First one, build core functionalities. Okay, now you already had native app, right? You are going to start a new Flutter app. Okay. So in that case, you will have the core function. Second one is the features or products. Okay, for example, homepage feedback. Then find or build plugins and packages. Okay, let's think about that. So find and build. Okay, so you might not always get packages and plugins that you require in Flutter. Okay, in that case, you have to build it. That's why it is find/build. Okay, cool. So while planning, okay, when I say planning, that means you are creating your Jira tickets, you are doing all the planning what you have to do in the next 3 months. Okay, so it will include whatever the development part is. Okay, so now first thing is that you have to plan core functionality. Without core functionality, you are not going to ship any product, okay, or any small product. Okay, and it will include network calls, interfacing with outer world. Okay, this is not very common word, but yeah. So let's say that you have a payment plugin, just pay. Okay, you will do payment, then you will get a call back, right? So this is for that one. So you should have, or you should plan this interface as well, because it is not very easy task. Okay, good. Then databases. Okay, you might have database in native. Okay, but now when you are migrating, you should also have a database in Flutter. Okay. Then images implementation. Well, this is very easy, but sometimes your application might break because of this. So you should have a complete plan for images implementation as well. Then deep push notification, then some growth application, for example, crash meetings analytics, and compatibility. Now, this is you can say biggest problem, that is compatibility. So I'll give you an example that I already have Android app with 5 million users, right? If I want to replace that with a Flutter app, okay, so if I have done a very small change, okay, which was not in Android, okay, then it is fine. But if there was something in Android which I have not done in Flutter, then it will start breaking the application. So let's say I push the new application on Play Store, user is installing it, and then application is crashing. So this is a bad experience and user will just uninstall the app. Okay. So that is the question thing again, compatibility. So at Zest we have spent almost 1.5 months on this compatibility. So first thing we have to find that, second thing we have to work on that, and third thing we have to test that the application is working. Okay. So from all of this compatibility is very important. Cool. And then build product slash features. Okay. So now that your core is ready, okay, that means you are good that your new Flutter application will not crash or will not do any or will end up in an experience that you have not thought of. Okay. So this is just for that. So this is very easy part. Okay. Where you will get screen, you have to design it, you have to test it and release it. So this is hard part. That some plugins are not available. Camera, Google, these plugins are available. So if you have a feature in your native app, you can easily replicate that in Flutter app. But if you do not have that plugin, okay, then you have to plan accordingly that you will build that plugin by your own, or you will contact the company to provide a Flutter plugin. Okay. And if they are not providing, then make sure that you have to build that plugin. Because if you don't have that plugin, you cannot deliver app. And that's what happened with us. That's why I believe got delayed by 1 month. Okay. Then now these two, if you can see, some Android plugin, some iOS plugin. What does it mean? It means your application might have some feature, okay, which only works for Android. And your application might have some feature which only work with iOS. Okay. For Android, let's say that SML feature or some location feature, right? In Android you can easily get it. So you can build any application in Android, but for iOS you cannot do that. So in that case, you should have a plugin or package which caters this kind of scenarios. Again, why this is important planning? Because if you have not planned this well, okay, just before releasing the date, you will get that error from QA that this is an issue, okay, and if you have not planned that, it will again end up in adding 7 to 8 days in the release plan. Okay. So yeah, that was about planning. Any question on planning? Okay, अभी तक किसको समझ में आ रहा है, किसको नहीं समझ में आ रहा है? अरे जिसको समझ में नहीं आ रहा हाथ नीचे।
समझ में नहीं आ रहा है
हाथ नीचे। आप लोग को नहीं समझ में आया? Okay, good. So, इसलिए मैं स्टार्टिंग में बोला था कि this is something which you will fully understand at the later stages. Okay, क्योंकि इसमें बहुत सारी चीजें included which are directly proportional to your experience. Okay, so don't take it much hard here, once here. It is very easy. Once you start building your application, you will understand everything slowly. Okay. और ये फिर कुछ और बताइए। कितने तक? Question. तो यहाँ पे इमेज में बनाना। Question. Any question? Yeah.
So let's say we had an application in native platform, so then we decided to go into Flutter part. So what do you think will be the better approach for places where you require plugins which uses native functionality? So do we prefer to have a plugin provided by Flutter to have the functionality, or keep the native part implemented and use it as it is? Because either way you have the capacity to build those features, and since you are building those features, there is a guarantee that you get a solution that is very customized for you. Or is it better to have the community plugin come into action and take that responsibility for your side? What is the better option?
Well, whatever best you can think of. Okay. For me, if let's say a plugin is from JustPay, okay, so JustPay is a private company. So in that case, I will build that plugin by my own, or I will tell JustPay to build a plugin for me. Okay. But if there is some plugin which is from random developer, okay, who have built for us, okay, and he is not maintaining that. So in that case, also I will build that plugin by my own, okay. But if that is something, let's say by Street, okay, where there is working. So in that case, you have to ask Street, okay, give me plugin, because there will be lots of complexities that you cannot handle it, or you may not know. Okay. So yeah. But whatever is the best use case for you, you have to work with that.
So there is something called as platform channels, right? So can we do this? First question, that there is some plugin in Android native, for example, implemented in Kotlin or something. Then you can call it via message channel, or do you implement it on your own in Flutter? So which is the better approach here? Like to use the native implementation and just call it, or just building it on Flutter? But it will take a lot more effort, I guess.
No. So let's say that you have homepage ready in your Android, okay? And homepage requires
some plugin, like for example QR code plugin or something.
So if your whole page or whole feature is already built in Android, okay? In that case, go for that platform channel and don't remove that plugin. Remove your whole page, okay? But as you said that if you have the bandwidth, okay, in that case, create a plugin, okay, and use it on front end. Yeah. Again, so it is all dependent on how much time you have, how much developer you have. I guess I don't have a screen where I was doing comparisons, okay. So how many developers you have, how many time you have, and how good is your planning is, you know, then how frequently you are releasing your app. So it depends on multiple factors, and choose whatever suits you best. So there is no one answer. Yeah.
Do you have like an explanation of how you can make a plugin exclusively for Android or exclusively for iOS? Like as you said, like some features don't work. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So there is one thing, interface. Okay. That I was saying here. Yeah, there was something. Interface. Yeah. Interfacing is after. So this interface is nothing but just piece of code, okay, which acts like a gateway. Okay, so let's say that I have just pay payment. Okay, just pay payment only works for Android. So what I will do in my plugin, I will have Android code. Okay, but I will not have iOS code. Okay, so whenever my iOS application is trying to invoke that, okay, it will get an error that this particular piece of implementation you do not have an access. Okay, it will not break your app. Okay, it will just give you an error. So yeah, which interface you can do that? And it is very easy. Okay, you can go to GitHub and try to find out plus community plugins, and you can find that in that.
What does the iOS user see in that case, for example? Like,
no, they do not. They will not see anything if you have managed your errors. Yeah.
So I propose my CPU to convert the native Android application into Flutter. He asked me to prepare the most complex page in any application is home page from UI perspective. So he asked me to create a Flutter home page of our application. I created it and I embedded it into the native application, the existing application. He asked me to navigate to Flutter on click of some button. So after clicking on that button, it took quite a while to go to Flutter part. So because of that one reason, the whole idea of converting it to the Flutter was scrapped.
Yeah. So we had same issue. So in our current Android app, we have 4 Flutter packages. Okay, I call it packages. Okay, and so we got same issue. Okay, whenever you were trying to navigate, it was giving you that lag. Okay, and we figured out that that lag is coming from Flutter engine. Okay, so if your Flutter engine is not warmed up, or is it not ready to use, in that case you will see that lag. So what you can do, if you know that user is going to click on that, so warm up your Flutter engine before going on that page. You can do that lazy. But yeah, make sure that as soon as user click on that button, your Flutter engine is ready to serve.
Better idea is to build Flutter packages after the home screen. I mean, it should not be on the first screen. Make small Flutter modules in later stages of the application.
Again, that is part of planning. That's what I was saying. So you have multiple options. Just choose whatever best suits you.
You can start asking. Anyone? Yes, absolutely.
Like, I am a beginner in Flutter, so I also wanted to contribute for open source. So what should be the initial start? Like, how should we do it? Like, exact way?
So, contributing to open source in Flutter.
Yeah.
The thing I like about Flutter as a whole, I think there was some I didn't hear it fully, I can get the context from, but there was talk about writing your own libraries and stuff like that, right? Thing is, a lot of stuff is much easier to do with Flutter, in the sense that you can build your own projects and libraries and share it much more easily. Whereas with, especially Android for me at least, libraries and stuff was much more difficult in it. So, in terms of projects, you can have your own contributors. My point is, your own contributions matter quite a lot. So now, if you want a full path to that, do you veer on the content side or the project side? Do you prefer making, do you like making content, like in some sorts of articles or videos, or do you prefer making projects and like libraries and stuff like that?
Like projects.
Projects. So, thing is, even directly to Flutter, like Flutter itself is an open source project, but how I kind of got into it was into the content side as well as the project side, and essentially making a project, documenting what I did effectively. So in terms of that, I would suggest look at all the if you want to begin and if you're starting out, I would suggest making some sort of UI kits, because that's the easiest way to approach things. Right? So UI kits or basic designs, that would be the way. So I'm assuming this is, if that's for a job, if you want to show somebody as to what you've done, if you want to build a portfolio, then find out what is the best thing to show them, right? So if you just make a library, like in that case, it won't be exactly impressive because they may not know what it does. Whereas an app is much more clear to its objective. So in that case, UI kits and apps much clearer, and plus you can showcase your core, your architecture, whatever it is. And currently even the job resume thing, they have the job descriptions. They have you must know blog or you must know whatever. I don't agree with that, but they have. So In that case, you can even showcase your, like, I know these things. Once you're done with that, then I would suggest go into more advanced projects in the sense that make your own libraries, and that's what I love doing because they make your work easier as well as other people use it, and then you can actually deal with the whole open source process. You can deal with issues, you can deal with bug attempt directly, and then once you get to a good enough level, you can either contribute to major libraries or you can even contribute Flutter directly. Flutter directly is not as hard as you think. It's basically there's all kinds of issues. There's issues on the engine level, which I don't understand. And there's issues in general as well, like, some are very little, typos and stuff. Some are slightly more intensive, and where you have to write tests and everything. Others are more speculative, really, about, like what they're going to implement further. So you can even start contributing to that. And that, I think those later on will be your most heavy hitting kind of things on your resume if you ever do it. If you have contributed to Flutter there, that, nothing else holds momentum, right? Like that is your thing. So I would say it's that way. If you're a project person, first create stuff you can show, you want kids, direct apps, then go to libraries and stuff like that, and then please engage with other people. Don't just be in your own bubble, because honestly, being in your own bubble was good, but now since that community is bigger, it's not a very good idea. And then later on, even a larger library Flutter, that would be my suggestion. I had some content thing, but since your project was fine, that would be a better approach.
I guess you covered everything.
Yeah.
First, what is being the open source? Okay. You want to do open source contribution, but what do you mean by open source? Open source means you just do something for others. It can be articles that I say, okay. So I like doing articles, okay. Because in article, for example, this one, I can prepare an article on this. So I can, encounter with larger audience. Projects are very specific, plugins are very specific. If you like projects, then find out what issues you have come up with, daily, for example, you can go and search on Stack Overflow or Twitter and just prepare a ready-made solution. And even if a single person is able to use that solution, then it is an open source.
Yeah, totally agree with your point.
I got points. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question? Yes?
First of all, I'm very honored to be in the presence of everyone, especially Flutter GDs and the organizer as well as Yashashree. So this might sound a bit wannabe or common, but I really want to be a Flutter GD, and I think I have worked on various applications apart from Flutter as well, so I do have the experience. What I do lack is the art or the skills to share my work done with the community, which I have recently started doing it on Medium. So I would like to have some tips from you guys, like how to be a Flutter GD or how to be more open. Just like you said, don't be in your bubble. So even I know 1,000 things and I'm not sharing even 5 of them, so I'm in a bubble kind of. So I don't want to continue that thing.
So I'll tell you my story. So when I got into Flutter community, okay, I saw Deven, Pooja, Pawan, everyone. So I thought मुझे भी बनना चाहिए GD. Limelight मिलता है वो जानते हैं. And then I contacted Deven कि यार मुझे भी GD बनना है, मुझे भी GD बना दो कैसा है. So he told me one thing that being a GD nothing. Okay, आप GD बन जाओ कुछ फायदा नहीं है. And yeah, that is what I experienced last 1 year. कि आप GD बन के that is not important. Okay, आप GD क्यों बन रहे हो वो important है. As you said that आपने 1000 जगह पे काम किया बट आप शेयर नहीं कर रहे. तो GD में से एक पॉइंट की GD सब शेयर करता है. And because see, मुझे सब कुछ नहीं आता. Example generative arts, मुझे उसमें कुछ भी नहीं आता. I'm zero with that. Okay, so but I'm GD. Why? Because I keep sharing things. Right? For example, this talk, I've shared that. Even before being GD, I was in Pune for 2 times. Okay, so yeah, GD was very easy to लोगों से share करता है. And बस यही.
So I think he's given a holistic answer as to what being a GD is. I'm going to give you, so currently on Twitter there's a lot of controversy around this topic, so I'm going to tell you what the objectives idea is. Okay? The main thing right now is that the question is what metric are you going to be judged on, right? do you, if we say, okay, you're going to be judged by years of experience, okay, I have 10 years of experience, we know that doesn't come to anything, right? Like me, but it also may not. We may say, okay, I've been in Flutter for this long. See, it's like this. I don't pretend to be an expert in everything. I have my own things, which I like doing, and I think I'm pretty good at those. But if you're like, I don't know every state management thing there is, I don't know every, I haven't tried all of it. So the thing is, there is no good metric. First, that's the first point. The current metric that is being used is content. Content meaning not just videos and articles like you were talking about, but also talks like this, right? So being outwards in some kind of way, just about content, some sort of article, video, something, that is the current metric being used. Okay. A lot of the people who are currently here are more just early adopters. Those are very different examples. They were basically here since the Event had 500 members, and they were here since then. So more or less, it's relatively easier for them. It's relatively easier for me. It's straightforward. So the thing is, with the added amount of competition that you're going to have, you're going to have to be. I like being in my bubble a lot, but at the same time, when I meet people who are like-minded, right? I like sharing. I don't have an objective in mind. I have to share this much. I'm talking about my project, you're talking about your projects, and this, that happens. I don't need to think about, okay, I have to share this much. I'm still your own project. I'm with like-minded people, right? So the thing is, you have to be like with the current metric. If you want to be leading, you have to be outward-facing, because that is the current metric we use. Maybe that will change, and maybe that will be easier. But as for now, it won't. And if content is a thing, basically, if that's the rules of the game right now, then that's how you have to play. If you can't say, I want the basketball to be over here, that's just not how it works. So, I'm just keeping it because there's a lot of stuff going on around that. I don't want to comment on that, but just in an objective sense, you have to go that way because currently that is how the rules are set. So, I would suggest, whatever you're comfortable with, start with it. Whether it's small articles, whether it's your own experiments, I don't like, a lot of large, interesting content, more, specific things I've done. I like that. Whatever that is for you, you can start with that and see where it goes. You don't have to do something because I do it, he does it, or anybody else does it, right? So, that's what I would suggest. I hope that answers something.
So the first article was age calculator in Flutter.
Age calculator. Wow.
Age calculator. So whatever you're doing, just share it with someone.
Start with baby steps and follow that. Start with the baby steps and follow them. So you will, write some blogs, post it, reshare it, have it in LinkedIn, and so you will build with your confidence and you will start, connecting to the people.
Just one more question, and it is very optional for you guys or for you to answer. See, this is a problem you might have faced, you might have not, but the thing is that I have the necessary knowledge, I have the necessary time, but I get distracted into things like suddenly I get into searching for random things on the internet, like on the YouTube, for example, alien and multiverse and time travel and everything. So ये सब चीज़ों से बाहर निकल के फोकस करके मुझे ज़्यादा medium.com पे या बाकी चीज़ों पे ये सब चीज़ें पोस्ट करनी है। योगा कर ले योगा। Meditation, yeah, that I have been suggested before.
Yes, sir. So this is a funny story because I'm also really into physics. I would have done a BSc, MSc if I wasn't in computers. I was also really into that. Right? I was really into astrophysics. I was into space and everything. And funnily enough, I have these random experiments, and it somehow seems to connect. Just like you do random enough things, and they will connect in some way or the other. I was in college. I was doing my second SIH or something, right? And I had a project on ISRO, and ISRO. Yeah. So ISRO he had a project where they are like, okay, you have to use an Android API, like the raw GNSS data. You have to calculate GPS in a better way. So I'm like, okay, this is everything I like. It's a space in it. It has GPS and physics in it. It has Android in it, and I can use it. So the first thing I wrote the raw GNSS plugin just because I can do that same thing in Flutter instead. So we did that. We took that raw GNSS data. We had many filters for it. We basically calculated what we call PV position, so PV solution to actually calculate data. We did noise reduction. We did a bunch of stuff, and those plugins I created for that project who's been of them are some of the most popular Flutter now. So the point is, doesn't just randomly, like, even if you create, my point is just don't leave it half-hearted, like, complete it, like, whatever it is, because somehow things connect, and, like, in that project I learned a lot more about GPS than anybody should know, and it just, like, those things connect, and it's okay to go in random directions, but, like, I have that problem a lot of times, where I like to do cool stuff, but that goes so far away, like, like, 2 weeks ago I was on an ML thing, last week I'm like, okay, I'm back here, and it's just like it happens. But like, what I'm trying to do is like, find a way, like, my friends suggested this as well, like, find a way to make this all related in a way, like, make this all support each other, so then you actually go in one direction instead of going out in every single direction. So it takes time, but like, you I'm figuring it out, but don't stop experimenting just because people are doing just one thing over and over again.
Yeah, वही तो किसको जो मजा आता है, ठीक. So, for example, if you go and see my medium, so I have not posted anything from last 6 to 7 months. Okay. क्योंकि मेरे को वैसे and do something other, ठीक है. Plan होता है कि हाँ ठीक है करेंगे, then कुछ और आता है फिर उसमें हम चले जाते हैं, ठीक है. It's okay because you gain experience there, but yeah, make sure you plan go for example for this talk. I have planned it, that's why यहाँ पे बोला तो एक ही नहीं होगा. ठीक है, so अभी से हम प्लान की उसको ले जाके देखो तो अरे तो लगभग साल के नहीं हो पाए तो वो में भी हो सकता है.
So basically वही है कि थोड़ा planning is important. Otherwise ऐसा distraction तो होता ही रहता है. Insta है, LinkedIn है, चलता ही रहता है. Whatever can be the distraction is. So if you have planned accordingly, तो थोड़े से उसके लिए deadlines set करनी चाहिए in order to achieve something. So
that was all. Thank you.
I would like to add upon this because मेरे से place होता है start something and then I go into physics. I usually read about relativity and Einstein's theory. So वो होता है सबके साथ ही होता है. And thanks to YouTube algorithm, 20 साल पुराने वीडियोस कभी भी आगे आते हैं, 10 साल पुराने वीडियोस आज आगे आते हैं. And I don't know, recently I was watching KRK reviews. I don't know why I reached over there, but वो होता है. So basically what I do is when I'm studying something or when I plan it. And I know it will divert me, but then I take that diversion as a relaxation time, and I've aligned some shortcuts on my Mac. Like after 15 minutes of YouTube, it will just give me a pop-up like too much time has been used. So I know I have to get back now. I have deactivated my Instagram. So वो चीज़ आप कर सकते हो. And once you start with having workload, बाद में आपको लगता है कि नहीं है, बहुत distraction हो गया. Now let's get into productivity. But yeah, you have to start. And starting में थोड़ा खुद को force करना ही पड़ता है. ऐसे नहीं कि यार नहीं हो जाता है, but it's common. सबके साथ होता है. I think everyone in the panel has faced this. You will also face it. So no problem with that. But छोड़ देना, वो problem है. मेरा एक application है. 6 महीने से उसमें कुछ अपडेट किया ही नहीं है. But naturally doing it. इसमें कुछ हवा चल रहा है, अच्छे से चल रहा है. होता है. Any other questions? Yes?
These days, I see people doing leaf code and DS stuff a lot. So, what's your take on that? Like, should we do that or like focus on building projects in that? Leaf code.
Okay, so okay, so you're asking about should you practice or should you build projects, right? So without practice, would you be able to build projects?
Yeah, like you can have the developer's way of doing it, like just search and build, or like just keep practicing.
Okay, if I just run for 100 meters every day, right? Will I be able to run a marathon?
No, different. Like it's a different.
So what the point I'm trying to make is that
see, anyone can get out a substandard project out, right? They can deliver a project which is, basically running, right? And all the happy flows and all the corner cases have been cleared, but the next person who comes into the game understands nothing, correct? So for that, when you go on to all these competitive coding grounds, right? You get to understand what industry standards are, right? So they are not either or, they are together. You have to do both, right? You have to have some kind of time slots, created for those. Yeah, I'll do this on this day, right? And then go for it in that sense.
Yeah, but one more, I would ask you again, what significance does something like dynamic programming or something like that have in this case? Because you're not going to use it in a project or something. At least in entry-level projects or something like that.
But how do you know if you are going to just work on entry-level projects or not? Do you know your future? Nobody knows, right? So, and you should always think of yourself like you are going to move into a better direction. You are always going to, go up on the slope, right? Not downwards. So, you always have to be prepared for something that you haven't done yet. Because whatever you have done yet or whatever you are expecting is something you can easily achieve, right? If someone asks me to write a normal CRUD API, I'll not do it. I'll ask someone to do it for me. But if there is something complex which really needs, engineering, right? Then I'll need something like dynamic programming or something like that, right? I might need. So we have to have that arsenal of, things available at our disposal, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else to add?
Hello. Hi. Can I give you a name?
Gaurav.
So the thing is, I have a slightly different perspective on this. The thing is, you stood up, you asked this question, right? And now I know that you're interacting. I know you're here. I would not have known otherwise. I mean, obviously, but now I would remember we stood up and asked this question to me. The question is, now, are you really talking about merit or visibility, right? These are the two things you need to keep in mind. If you're going for a university placement scenario, there is no other option, simple as that, because they don't consider it, they won't even look at your face otherwise, I know. So the point is, never really sat for placements, but I never had a profile for that either. So the thing is, your question is, in university context, you have no other option. I'm just telling you straightforward, so whatever I say, this is an exception to that. Now, in terms of this thing, in terms of jobs, the key is visibility, right? And now, who do you want to be visible to, right? So let's say, for example, my company found me because I did great stuff on GitHub or I had stuff on Medium. This does not mean you have no code knowledge. You have to know that. I had a technical interview afterwards. I had a proper interview afterwards. Okay, so you have to prove that you're up to the mark, whatever it is. Even if you discovered, you have to prove that. So it's not. I'm not saying that's an exception, but at the same time, visibility for me at least gets you into the door, right? Once you're in the door, then you have to prove your mettle. But for now, what's happening is, especially in the Indian context, there's a lot of people. And if you want to apply for foreign jobs especially, they have to know you exist. How they know that you exist is your question. Okay, that might mean projects. For me, that meant a lot of things. So honestly, mine were really random projects. But the thing is, you have to be, I think, like what he said, you have to make it unique. You can't just make something that the next person can make as well, right? You may have basic projects to show the reliance on these principles, but at the same time, I like making unique stuff better because that actually proves what you know. That's not just a copy of whatever the last person made. So, in a sense, yes, is it important? Yes, it kind of is intertwined in the sense that, but do you need the full suite of tools? Absolutely. There is, what questions you'll be asked in university, here in university, understand, if Google or Microsoft recruits you, they are not recruiting you as a Flutter person, even if they know you as a Flutter person, they will not recruit you as a Flutter person, they recruit you as a general person, and then you may take any project. A Google person, have you ever read the book Androids? Chet has.
No.
So there was a book initially, we actually wrote how the Android operating system came to be. And what happened is, it came from, the founder, he came from outside. So they had a hard time hiring people because Google wanted journalists. And and they needed specialists. And the thing is, because Google just does not hire specialists, they don't care if you're going to do this one thing, they want you to be good at everything. But if you go to most startups, they want you to be good at this one general thing. In those cases, you will likely not be asked the full suite of, any algorithms, any this or that. You will be asked more Flutter specific or whatever framework specific questions. But the only thing I would recommend is understand what your limits are. I know what my limits are. I know that, okay, if you ask me to write type-7 implementation right now, I will not be good. You have to know what your limitations are and what kind of stuff they might ask. If you even are visible later on, and then that company expects you to have all those skills as well, then you have to. So, are they separate things? To some extent, yes. As in, you don't need a full suite of what you will do on the keyboard. You need some basic stuff at best. And I would recommend, especially if you want to go outside, if you want for jobs, some company outside, they need to see you first. So build your visibility in that sense. But again, you have to impress them later on as well. They're not just going to take you because you're popular. So, I think that's the best of time to give.
Nicely said.
Does it help?
Yeah, so you're basically saying that to build visibility, you need to build more open source stuff, right?
Yes. So because otherwise there is no way they can do it, right? Then the individual does not. I think like he said, right? You can't live in your own bubble and expect them to come to you. You have to show that okay, I exist, I am good. Then they'll actually interview you. They'll at least ask you, are you interested? So you have to show your worth that, and then you actually have to prove it as well later on. So.
Thanks.
Yes, Yogesh. So before we ask a question, I actually want to reply on this question because I kind of have not a strong opinion, but a strong opinion out there. And there has been an opinion out from this side, and there is an opinion from Vivek and as well. And as a professional, I kind of want to come up with this. I kind of want to bring this point that there might be some people who really want to build projects. They just don't find writing aimless codes, interesting and just that something can click them. I think I'm that kind of person. When I started things up, I was very different. Okay, I was not doing anything which is you can say professional. I knew I had to make a project, the thing, and this is subjective part. Okay, everyone might have a different opinion how they actually want to go. If you really want to go into business, or if you really want to go into a company or a professional thing, you definitely have to have those skills. You cannot be entered either. But let's say if you really want to build something up, you just not really have to care about the best ways of doing things, because ultimately you will find those struggles where you have to figure out what are the best ways. And at that moment of time, you will really understand that this is the best way. The best part of it is you understand the reason why it is the best way, because you have tried the worst ways. So what I mean to say is, if you really are a project type of guy, start the project. Maybe it can be of yours. And build it up, it definitely is a visibility, build it yours and understand what are the issues you are facing, resolve them, and then try to, you get to learn from this perspective and then you try to build up your visibility as well. Then if you are, let's say, if you are a guy who is very specific and you just want to get an interview cleared very quickly, go with dynamic programming and things like that, because that will bring you the knowledge which companies will ask you, like Google and all, which companies will ask you to get the hiring part. So it all depends, but if you are really a project type of guy, I really recommend, or at least from my point of view, what I recommend is go with the project, try to learn in the process, and not try to get a bit boring type lifestyle, or just trying to do things because you just have to do it and then go ahead. Just my perspective. Coming to the question that I wanted to ask, it is specific to packages and libraries out there. So you can always use packages if you require to use it. But there can be a different aspect, not use packages and build that thing by yourself. Like for instance, if you want to use a state management approach where you want to use Stream, so you want to use Stream, you can possibly use block providers, for instance, block. But just a question out here is, first of all, what kind of limitations are there when you use packages? Okay, and when should you use package and when you should avoid using package? From the perspective of performance side as well as ease of coding as well. So that's my question. It's clear.
Okay. So the first question is when you should use package and when you should not, right? So let's take example bottom navigation bar. Okay, there is some fancy bottom navigation bar. Okay, which is exactly same which I wanted. Okay, so now you can be like I can use it or not use it. Okay, so in that case what I will do, I will fork it. Okay, and then keep it to myself because I'm not sure if in future that guy will change that or not. Okay, or that guy will maintain it or not. Okay. So when it comes to maintenance part, okay, either fork it or create by yourself. Okay. Then there is another thing that I was talking about the string package, right, which is very complex. So in that case, you have to use a plugin. Okay. But if there is something which is let's say camera. Okay. So when Flutter 3.0 was in market, so I guess camera plugin was not updated. Okay. So what happened? We migrated whole project 3.0. Okay. But we forgot to check some packages, for example, camera. So in that case, what happened? Everything is migrated. Now you cannot go back. Okay. And your camera is not updated. So in that case, again, you have to forget, you have to update it. Say, with maintaining part, if you can create a root plugin, that is well and good. But if you're not able to create, or if, for example, string, okay, if you're not able to create it, then just use Zest. So the first preference, create your root. Second, use official plugin. Okay, you can always depend on official. Okay, and third one is if there is official plugin but it is not maintained. Okay, then fork it and create a root.
No, my question is, well, thank you for the insights. My question is, do we have to use plugins at all? You can implement something without using a plugin itself. You can just write the code and you're done with it. So there are first of all, you can create a plugin which definitely from a development side of view makes things very easier, even fast on the development because you don't have to handle that implementation on it. Second approach is you don't use the plugins to make the overall implementation yourself in the code itself. And you have to, I just want to ask from this perspective, from the performance perspective, when it really makes sense to use, not to use any plugin and just to do things yourself. Secondly, from a development overall ease and things like that, when it really gets very, time.
So to add up on what Abhay said, so what I follow personally and my team. So there are two parts in the application, like the UI part and what we're doing, and then there is the architectural part. So what me and my team does is, when it comes to architecture, we don't use any plugins because then we have to somehow depend on the plugins. So, for example, there is a block provider plugin to create the block architecture, but we don't use it. We create our own block class and then we follow that. So I don't have to be dependent on that plugin. It is good, it is updated, the code is good, but then I can create my own work in the architecture. The architecture is completely under my control. And if that thing is consuming time, I will do the time cutting in the UI. So at that time, I will use a normal widget where I can use plugins to create better UIs. So in future, I can update the UI on my own. So if I have time, I can update the UI, I can hire the time management over there. But if the architecture is wrong, then there is no point of having a good UI. So I make sure when it comes to architecture, I try to write my own code, like as much as possible.
Deven, any other thoughts you have on this?
Okay, so there's a few, like from we develop as the users, so I think a few, it's a slightly different perspective from us. What happened is, I think null safety when it came, that really got misunderstood before. When null safety came, suddenly half of the packages you were getting all these messages saying your app is not null safe or it's some null safe and some null safe. People just like, no, this is too much. So in terms of obviously native code, don't touch. Simple as that. Somebody has written better native code. I don't see that well. So native code I just don't touch. In terms of at least when we're building an SDK. So for example, Git overrides don't work. Like we can't just pull something from Git and ship it to Dev. So suddenly we knew that we had to use as few components as possible because if the original developer stopped maintaining it, we cannot just ship either we would have to fork and publish it like ourselves, which we didn't want to do because that's theft. And otherwise we can't just ship we can ship a temporary Git version, but that's a very powerful way to do we can't just say we want to ship a patch or something, and we can't say that to a proper client. So in terms of building SDK, you have to use as few UI components as possible just by default, because otherwise you'll get overrides to not work. You have to either steal it in a really nice way and say sorry, or you basically just, you do that. In terms of the project, it's more like this. We basically evaluated by how much is it going to harm you if tomorrow this plugin just went. Left pattern instance in JS when half the internet broke really. That's the thing. How much is it really going to hurt you if that thing tomorrow stops working? So if it's a lot, then you basically have to ask the question, is it worth that development effort? And the question is really what team size do you have? Because you can't just have one or two people. And because the thing is, if people consider a lot of things to be permanent, you don't have your team members permanently there. So we consider this on a case-by-case basis if we have to add anything. And we see every scenario. If this plugin stops working, if this plugin has breaking changes that we can't add, suddenly, for example, our team size is short. So whatever happens, we have some backups. But again, I think case by case is different. If you're building an SDK versus if you're building an app, that's different. In an app, your user doesn't really see what is going behind it. So I think in an app, for most things, it is fine. You can even fork your own thing. So my answer here would be in an app, I think it's relatively chiller. But in an SDK, it is absolutely not. You have to be very, very careful about adding any dependency at all, because in the future, any of your customers might get it, and that might be an unpleasant experience if it has breaking changes or whatever. So.
Yeah, so before moving ahead with the photos and everything, just a small token of appreciation to the speakers who invested their time and came here and prepared their topics. So first I would like to call Yashashree over here. Gauri, please hand over the token of gift from Flutter Pune. Deven, Joshi. And Vivek. Come to the center of it. It's just a small token of appreciation. Flutter Pune. Thank you.
And additionally, another token of appreciation to our Sri sir for